Hi everyone, happy April and welcome to this week's episode of Forbes Flash. We've got a nice mix of news to talk about this week. Let's get going. First and foremost, congratulations to everyone who is named to our 30 Under 30 Asia list. The group is really impressive and I encourage you to take a look by checking out #Forbes Under 30 on social. Named to the list are entrepreneurs representing 23 countries and territories in the Asia-Pacific region who are innovating in technology and disrupting age-old industries. Take the founders of COWAROBOT, a Shanghai-based developer of autonomous driving tech that raised $21.2 million last year. One of their products? The Rover suitcase, which follows its owner around, automatically avoiding obstacles. I could definitely use one of those. There are also names on the list that you've probably heard of before, and even if you haven't heard of BLACKPINK yet, you most likely know that K-pop is taking over the world. This South Korean foursome is leading the charge. They're the first girl group of any country to land on our Asia 30 Under 30 list, and they've set the bar for female K-pop acts on the Billboard 200 and Hot 100 charts. So, what's driving their success? The group says it's their multicultural background that allows them to communicate with fans all over the world. If this is the first you're hearing of BLACKPINK, I recommend listening to their collab with Dua Lipa. Kiss and Makeup is a jam. I want to highlight one more of the 300 incredible people on the list, Richard Yin. The 25-year-old social entrepreneur founded Demene Robotics to develop a landmine clearing device, which is the world's first remote-controlled robot that can lift a landmine out of the ground without detonating it. His work is making Cambodia a safer place and will hopefully help other conflict zones in the future. Again, you can read more about these young leaders at #Forbes Under 30. Now to shift over to a different type of story we covered this week, Google's announcement that the company will provide better benefits and pay to contract workers. The decision comes after a year of employee protests about the difference in salaries and perks for full-time employees versus temporary, vendor, and contract workers, many of whom are employed through outside firms. Google will now require that all its temporary and contractor workers based in the US receive a $15 minimum wage by 2020 and comprehensive health care, including 8 sick days and 12 weeks of paid parental leave by 2022. This is huge news since TVC workers make up more than half of the company's global workforce. That's at least 98,000 people. It's a step forward, says a former Google TVC worker who was helping organize at the company, but there's still more to be done. How employees are treated goes a long way, including to help companies' reputations. But in our most recent measurement of America's most reputable companies, trust is the #1 metric to look out for. Last year was a tough one for America's biggest businesses, as many were rocked by scandals and struggled to recover the public trust. Like Amazon, which after 5 consecutive years in the top 10, dropped to number 54. Part of the major downside is due to the company's inability to convince consumers that it's a good corporate citizen. Similarly, Google's battle with data breaches and employee protests has sent one of the country's previously most reputable corporations out of the top 100 altogether. On the other hand, some companies have had great years when it comes to reputation, like Netflix, which lands in the top spot after being number 22 last year. How'd they do it? Long story short, Netflix has positioned itself on the right side of scandal more often than not. The company also hasn't shied away from reinventing itself and being transparent with their customers about how. What I find interesting about this list is how different the top 5 companies are, so I'll leave it with you to think about. First, as mentioned, is Netflix. Then we have the Hershey Company, Whirlpool, Rolex, and McCormick & Company. Last but not least, make sure you read our latest cover story about Marc Andreessen that came out this week as part of our Midas List package. In his first major interview in 2 years, the backer of companies like Lyft, Slack, and Airbnb talks about his plans to upend the venture capital industry again. You can read all about it by checking out #ForbesMidas on social media. Thanks for tuning in this week. I'd love to hear your feedback, so make sure you're sending it via #ForbesFlash. We'll be back next week.